All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into the deep end. We've got an incredibly wild intersection of an actual historical mystery and, honestly, one of the most expansive modern theories out there. We're going to be unpacking some highly curated source documents that weave together the death of a legendary inventor, missing government files, and allegations of a massive, covert global operation. Our goal today? Simply to impartially examine exactly what these sources lay out for us and see how they connect established historical events to some pretty sweeping technological claims.
So right off the bat, is the weather being weaponized? I mean, it's a huge question, right? But according to the documents we're analyzing today, the answer isn't just yes. It's that a highly organized, multi-layered infrastructure has actually been manipulating our atmosphere for decades. The sources allege that this isn't just about, making it rain for farmers, it's about global control. Literally using the skies above us as a tool for environmental and social manipulation.
Okay, let's dive into this. The sources refer to this alleged operation as the New Manhattan Project, or NMP for short. What is it? Well, it's described as a covert global weather modification program, primarily operating within NATO member countries and reportedly spearheaded by the United States. The project is said to have shifted from a developmental phase into full-on, large-scale deployment by the mid-1990s. And the sources paint a picture of a tightly synchronized effort. We're talking aircraft, dispersed chemical particles, and directed electromagnetic energy all working together.
Now, what's really interesting about what we're looking at here is the sheer staggering scale of these allegations. The sources claim that what most of us just look up and see as normal commercial flight condensation trails, contrails, are actually part of a deliberate, highly coordinated effort to inject specific materials into the Earth's atmosphere, and not just locally, but on a massive global scale.
To pull off something of this magnitude, the sources break the New Manhattan Project down into 4 integrated technological layers. First up, you have a massive chemtrail fleet. This allegedly uses both retrofitted commercial airliners and military planes, like the Boeing KC-135. Second is the payload itself, dispersed particles. We're talking things like aluminum, barium, and even radioactive isotopes injected right into the atmosphere. Third is electromagnetic energy. This points to ionospheric heaters, most notably HAARP up in Alaska, supposedly used to manipulate those atmospheric particles. And finally, the command and control layer. You need serious computing power for this, so think supercomputers, satellite remote sensing, and heavy bureaucratic oversight from agencies like DARPA and the MITRE Corporation.
Let's move on and see how this builds historically. The sources trace the project's conceptual roots all the way back to before 1946. They point specifically to the visionary ideas of Nikola Tesla regarding electromagnetic energy. Following Tesla, the so-called scientific era of weather modification supposedly kicks off in 1946. This involves General Electric researchers, figures like Irving Langmuir, Vincent Schaefer, and Bernard Vonnegut, developing actual cloud seeding technologies. Then throughout the 1950s, space charge experiments supposedly proved the whole thing was feasible, and by 1965, the sources point to government reports as evidence that a decision had been made for a massive domestic rollout. But actually, scratch that. Let's pause and rewind to that very first point, Nikola Tesla. Because this is exactly where the theory anchors itself to a very genuine, very real historical mystery. Back in January 1943, Nikola Tesla died alone in his room at the Hotel New Yorker. Now remember, this is the height of World War II, and Tesla had been openly discussing a death ray or teleforce device. Well, within 2 days of his death, representatives of the U.S. government's Office of Alien Property Custodian swept in. They seized all his possessions, his papers, his files. The fear was that his work on advanced particle beams absolutely could not fall into the hands of the Axis powers. To figure out exactly what they had just confiscated, the government called in Dr. John G. Trump. He was a highly respected MIT electrical engineer, and yes, fun fact, he was the uncle of Donald Trump. So after a 3-day review of Tesla's files, Dr. Trump concluded that Tesla's recent thoughts were, quote, primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character. He explicitly stated they did not include new, sound, workable principles. Essentially, the official government assessment was, look, there is no death ray, and there are absolutely no secret weapons here. Now, this creates a massive divergence between the official historical record and the New Manhattan Project theory. Officially, the dry bureaucratic reality insists Tesla's seized files were of absolutely no practical value. Case closed, right? But in stark contrast, the NMP theory proposes that the government actually did find workable plans for electromagnetic manipulation. The claim is that they suppressed those plans and then weaponized them as the foundational blueprint for a global weather control program. And the fuel that keeps this particular theory burning is a very real missing breadcrumb. Let's talk about the number 20. When Tesla's belongings were originally logged by the FBI and the Office of Alien Property, their inventory noted 80 trunks of his effects. 80. Yet in 1952, when the U.S. courts finally released Tesla's belongings to his nephew to be sent to a museum in Belgrade, only 60 trunks arrived. So, where on earth are the missing 20 trunks? For theorists, those 20 missing trunks are the exact hiding place of the New Manhattan Project's origins.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the sources weave established history right into their narrative. They look at the organizations developing very real technologies, things like radar, satellites, supercomputers, and they tie them directly to this alleged weather program. You see major corporate defense contractors listed, like Raytheon and Hughes Aircraft. You see massive government agencies like NASA and the CIA, and bureaucratic management through the MITRE Corporation. The sources argue these groups didn't just build our modern technological world, they supposedly built the NMP.
But perhaps the most striking connection the sources make is to Operation Paperclip. Following World War II, the U.S. brought over 1,600 former Nazi scientists to work for the military and intelligence sectors. The documents highlight prominent figures like Wernher von Braun and Kurt Davis, who obviously became monumental figures at NASA, and Dr. Martin Schilling, who became a VP at Raytheon. The theory suggests that the advanced rocket, satellite, and radar tech required for global atmospheric manipulation was largely driven by these former WW2 scientists once they integrated into the U.S. military-industrial complex.
Section: The Information War. Subtitle: Managing Public Perception. So how exactly does a global operation of this magnitude stay hidden in plain sight?
Well, the sources dedicate a massive amount of analysis to the idea that public perception is carefully, meticulously managed by intelligence agencies. Why? To ensure we don't question what we see happening right above our heads. And this leads to one of the most provocative claims in the source material. According to the NMP theory, the very concept of man-made global warming has been utilized as a psychological cover story. The sources characterize major environmental documents, like the 1965 presidential report, Restoring the Quality of Our Environment, or a 1974 CIA study, as disinformation screeds. The argument here is that by convincing the public of an impending climate crisis, the establishment can safely introduce terms like persistent contrails or solar radiation management, basically linguistic tools used to normalize the presence of a chemtrail fleet, making us welcome the very geoengineering they are allegedly already conducting.
So, who supposedly has the immense power to coordinate governments, militaries, corporations, and global media to pull all of this off? Well, the sources attribute the governance of the NMP to a supranational entity often referred to as the Committee of 300, or sometimes the Network of Global Corporate Control. This is described as a tightly knit core of massive financial institutions, intelligence agencies, and a scientific technological elite that completely transcends national borders. They are the ones supposedly operating the program as a master tool for social control and environmental domination.
Which brings us right back full circle. The New Manhattan Project is a sweeping, staggering theory of global control, but it draws its lifeblood from very real historical anomalies. Think about it. If Dr. John G. Trump was entirely correct and Nikola Tesla's final papers were truly worthless, why did the government rush so fast to seize them? Why the decades of FBI surveillance? And most importantly, what actually happened to those missing 20 trunks? Whether you view the New Manhattan Project as a dire warning of military overreach or simply a fascinating modern myth, it absolutely forces us to ask, where exactly does the documented historical record end and the theory begin? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what you read.